Hello, everyone. Welcome to an all new episode of the Indic Explorer Show. I'm your host, Vineet. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Today's topic and the guest are very interesting because this guest is, of course, well known to us if you watch television primetime news. But the topic on which this guest is going to speak is very different and unique. The topic is social anxieties of youth in contemporary India. This is the outcome of the kind of discourse that we see, but we are looking at it from a socio-cultural point of view. So please join me in welcoming him on the show, Tehseen Poonawala. Namaste, Tehseen.
Namaste, Vinny. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and I hope your throat gets better soon.
Absolutely. And the good thing over here is, unlike primetime TV, because my throat is bad, you're going to take complete center stage. So
I always take center stage. I'm only a centrist. The rowdy right thinks I'm a lefty. The loony left thinks I'm a righty. And between the two of them, I'm in the center getting pissified.
So that brings me to a very pertinent question, which you also probably face, an identity crisis, right? Uh, how do you think the current discourse impacts the sense of identity amongst the Indian youth? Because everything is so polarizing on both sides. How do
Yeah.
you think that impacts youngsters at a daily level?
So, Vinny, thank you so much for again having me on the show. And that's a very good question to begin off with. So, for starters, I face no identity crisis. I am a star. I was a star. I will always remain a star. But, jokes apart, the fact is, we should be very worried about how we are going. And I said this on another podcast, and I'm going to repeat it to you. I call it the horseshoe theory. The rowdy right and the loony left. They're two sides of the horseshoe, and they are so close to each other, but they think they're poles apart. But if you look at a horseshoe, they're actually very close to each other. They want to cancel each other out. They have no space for discourse. They don't want to build bridges. And just look at what's happened in our country over the last 15 days. Just look at the discourse, because I'm sure by the time this podcast, this interview comes out, it won't be too far away from what's happened. So I'm talking about the last 15 days. Look at the discourse that our nation's going through. And within this discourse of polarization are people like you, Vineet, and people like me. Whether we are slightly right of the center or slightly left of the center doesn't matter. We are normal people who want normal things. All that you and I aspire for, Vineet, is a better quality of life, to give our family members slightly better life, and to make our country a better place to live in. And we are stuck between these two extremes that want to cancel each other out. I think it's very scary. It's scary for the youth.
Also, isn't it a problem if only ideology defines identity? I mean, there has to be other ways to have your own identity, right? Don't you think that's also very important?
Yeah, I think so. And I think people don't realize, those who fight over identity, right? They don't realize that this is harming themselves. The people who get onto the street are the poor who don't have jobs. But those fighting on religion culture are poor kids, are kids who don't have opportunities. Why is it you and I on whom FIRs will happen on social media? Look, I agree that we must have our point of view. But if that point of view makes Tehseen hate Vineet or Vineet hate Tehseen, then we must understand that that point of view has something wrong. Tehseen and Vineet can disagree, and we can agree to disagree, and yet be cordial with each other like we are on this show. I've seen your shows. Some of your views are slightly right. I may not agree with it, but yet you and I are having civilized discussion, right? You've invited me. Why can't it be this way? Because these guys feed off hatred. We should not allow that.
Do you think there is something got to do with, let's say, do you think that the Nehruvian consensus is probably not as valid today? Do you think that that has also, I mean, that has some impact, and probably people who are part of that consensus, since that consensus is not there anymore, that has led to, like, that's probably a trigger point. Do you think that?
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Nehru. I'm a huge, huge fan. The amount of abuses Nehru gets today, I think it's very unfortunate. But I think Nehru's greatest legacy to India was his ability to build consensus across various divisions. So Nehru also invites the RSS to join the Congress, right? along with Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The Congress under Nehru, because Congress was the principal political party then, as is the BJP now. Under Nehru, the Congress was a big tent where you had the right wing, you had the left wing, you had the centrist. So you had everybody under a tent, and the idea was to make India a developed nation. Now you can disagree with Nehru's point of view. That's fine. But in that tent, there was space for dissent. So a young Atal Bihari Vajpayee, a Bharatiya Janasangh MP, stops Nehru in the corridor of Parliament and says, "Hey, we have the war with China going on. We should call a special session of Parliament." And he takes Nehru to task. And at the end of the evening, Nehru, after answering all the questions, goes to Vajpayee and says, "That was brilliant." We've lost that. We've lost that. Look at it, Vineet. We had this amazing Parliament, special session of Parliament. Okay, we had a special session of Parliament where nobody knew what the agenda was. Secretly, the women's reservation bill is got in. Whether you support it or you not support it is a different issue. Everyone supported it, it's passed. But MPs were not told this bill is been got in. MPs were told different bills are being gotten. Is Parliament a medium for that? We have lost the art of building consensus. We must talk to each other. We are not enemies. We are friends who want the best for India. We've lost it. On the other hand, let me also take the case of the opposition. I'm not going to be biased on your show. The Prime Minister of the country is speaking in Parliament. How can you heckle the Prime Minister? He's the Prime Minister. I don't support the BJP. I'm very anti, but he's my Prime Minister, right? Allow him to speak. Of course, of course, he's taking political pot shots. Of course, he's not answering the questions. When he finishes, get up and corner him. That is what parliamentary democracy is about. Heckling the Prime Minister. So, this entire range of both sides, more so from those in government, because the onus of taking the country forward is that of the government. I find it appalling. I find his hatred appalling.
So I think a lot of these differences come due to the ideological differences between liberalism and nationalism globally and also in India. Do you think these two facets of thinking can build a bridge on some common minimums and at least agree to meet somewhere on a few things? Do you think that is even
Of course, it
possible?
is. I can't be a nationalist unless I'm not liberal. And I can't be liberal until I'm not a nationalist. There is no conflict between the two, except in India, where people seem to find a conflict between the two. I am a liberal. I'm an absolute liberal. And Vineet, you've obviously followed me. I have India on my veins, on my blood. What the hell? I will die for my country. But as a liberal, I believe my fellow citizens have a right to love who they want, eat what they want. There is no difference in the two. Similarly, a nationalist should be liberal. This is the greatest country on earth. This is a country that has given me birth, that has given us so much. It's such a beautiful land. Why should we fight over what people eat, who people love? Shouldn't our aim be to see that every single Indian gets food to eat and nutritious food to eat? Isn't that nationalism? Shouldn't the aim of this country be that while we've put Chandrayaan on the moon, and I'm so proud of that, every single man on earth walking on this ground gets equal dignity? Isn't that nationalism? While we conquer the stars and have the mission launched to the sun, shouldn't it be that every single child born in India is not malnourished? Isn't that also nationalism? Why should there be a difference between liberalism and nationalism? I am a nationalist. I love to see the Tiranga point on the moon. I love the Shiv Shakti point on the moon. But also my fellow citizen in India must get education and healthcare. According to me, that also is nationalism. Why should that be different? And if somebody needs proteins, they need proteins. There should be no fighting over meat. I don't think. That does not make me not nationalist. We conflate issues. Being a nationalist is being a liberal, and being a liberal is being a nationalist. I am a liberal and I'm proudly a nationalist, and I would take a bullet for my country.
I think the sad state of affairs is that I mean, although you frame them together, those are actually seen as oxymorons. And in this, I think a lot of the blame falls at the hands of the liberals, especially because they sometimes don't hold up for India in certain forums where they should in certain cases. Of course, there are exceptions, but in most cases, it's been found, not all of them, but a very large section of them, they don't sometimes stand up for the country. What benefits them maybe doesn't benefit the country in that regard. So sometimes I think that could also be a problem, and that's where, if you're very outward looking, I think also that's the problem with liberalism. If you're outward looking, then sometimes you deprioritize your inner world, which can be a problem.
But I'm very outward looking. I'm very outward looking. I don't find that as a problem in me. Do you think that's a problem in me? Honestly, I'm
Not in
asking you.
you specifically, Tehseen, but just by and large, like when someone goes in international forums, right? uh they are representing the country first, and then interacting with others. Like, you're coming from a standpoint of our country. The international forum cannot become the primary place, and then India coming second. I mean, that is probably a place, and I don't mean it just at a official level. Even in unofficial forums, when you go, there are social circuits abroad and all of that. It holds true there also, as in they sometimes associate with there more than here.
But let me ask you, and I agree with you. It's like I would never speak badly about India anywhere. For me, India is everything. That's my only identity. I live India. I breathe India. But let me ask you a counter question. When you have people in power, okay, in absolute power, with unlimited power, spewing hate in the country, and that is a reality, right? It makes people uncomfortable. And yet those same people go, for example, to Dubai and buy houses, or suddenly it's cool to make bigoted statements. The point that I'm trying to make is, while I absolutely agree you should never put your country down, I also think a lot of the, for example, the right wing rowdies put the country down with the kind of statements they make. For example, yesterday what happened, when this interview comes out in Parliament with a sitting MP, the kind of language he used in Parliament, it took away from the goodness the Prime Minister did with the Women's Reservation Bill, right? So imagine the repercussions of that. Now, I am a fan of what the Prime Minister has done of India's outreach to the Islamic world. I think that's magnificent. All right. It's clicked all the boxes with the Islamic world. Iran, Saudi, Qatar, India is doing so well with the Islamic world. And Egypt. What I'm trying to say is I completely get your point when somebody speaks abroad. And I get that. And India should be first. But this also puts India down. And therefore I say, my initial opening remark, the left loonies and the rowdy right, there is no difference between them. One preaches nationalism, the other preaches liberalism. Neither is liberal, neither is nationalist. They both are selfish. The actual liberals and the actual nationalists are people like us who want a simple life, who want a life of making our country better, our area better, our families better, and our lives better. We are the true nationalists and the true liberals.
In social media, my point is, when you make very outrageous statements, that's what finds success. Having said that, the point that you made where I disagree with you is, let's say there are differences. They could be legitimate or not legitimate, right? If those differences are there, दो भाइयों के बीच में अगर लड़ाई है, वो लड़ाई घर में होनी चाहिए, बाहर नहीं। वो बाहर जाके प्रिंसिपल को जाके बोलोगे दो स्टूडेंट्स के बीच में लड़ाई है कि आप सॉल्व कर दीजिए, वो सही नहीं है। You have to find a way to engage internally through all the means available, which are there, that are legitimately available in this country, rather than going out. Matlab, that's my limited disagreement. I don't want to get into ki what is the nature of disagreements. हो सकता है मतलब obviously between two sides there are going to be differences, but it's not just
But I
differences.
don't
The
think
the
but I don't think anyone's asked for foreign intervention. I think what's happened is, I think because of the hyper cancel culture on both sides, I think we're too soon to jump the gun. I think both sides need to calm down a bit. I really believe this, and sit and talk to each other. I think that's when things will come out. And I think we must have a formula on certain things where national interest is principle and the interest of the nation is principle.
So how do you think? And I come right now because you mentioned about the average Joe, the common man like me and you, right? How should people like us? Because at a larger macro level, politicians will find ways to disagree all the time, right? But regular people, Because when you go to work or when you are in and around your society, your networks, professional, personal, family, etc., even within families, and you know this better than anyone, because how does one deal with that differences amongst people? Because कितने लोगों से आप बात करना बंद करोगे because they think differently than you? Although I have seen people, and Tehseen, you will find it very, it's very disconcerting. People saying, I won't date someone from the other side. Do you think it's, matlab, yes, nahi karenge. Both sides, nahi karenge. We will not engage with someone on that side. Oh, you think this way? Let's not work together. How
I think that's wrong.
that regular person mein ye hona, that's what I wanted you to
It's wrong.
specifically come at. What do you think?
It's wrong. I think, and that's what my efforts are. This is what my mission, I believe, is towards my country, is to build bridges. I see myself and I visualize myself over the next 20, 25 years. I visualize myself as a bridge builder. I do visualize myself. And that's what I want to do. I think we must ask ourselves the question, if your religion, if your culture, if your way of life, if your political ideology forces you to hate someone else, maybe you need to pause and reflect within yourself, not your religion, not your culture, that maybe you've misinterpreted it, because no religion, no culture, no way of life teaches you to hate another person. I may absolutely disagree with you. I may, but can't I have a conversation with you, understand, talk to you, and you talk to me, and we put our points across? Why should there be a divide? Why can't there be a bridge? Why should there be hatred? Why can't there be conversation? I think the important point is conversation. We should talk to each other. I think we've lost the art of communicating. We so want to attack the other person. We so want to put the other person down. We so want to humiliate somebody else. I think that's a terrible thing to do. Terrible. Can't we just be bridge builders?
And I think somewhere, at least the podcast medium is a very good, place where it probably can happen more, because I have noticed, based on my personal experience as a podcaster and watching other podcasts, I've actually seen people come together even if they have differences on small things, changing their mind in the middle of a podcast because you nudge them. If you come from a
Yeah.
place to expose Tehseen, then it's never going to happen. Nobody is going to agree because they are going to be in the defensive. But sometimes I've seen
Correct.
people have
Immediately.
literally, you nudge them, okay, I understand what you're talking about, but what about this? And sometimes people are forced to at least reflect. And even if you reflect, it's a battle won in a way.
I think the podcast is a magnificent medium, which is why I was so happy to engage with you. Because in the podcast, the real person comes out, and I love doing podcasts. Apart from the fact that a lot of people come out and watch podcasts now, I love it because it's the real me. There's no pretense, right? On a TV channel, I am at a certain time believed to I have to take a certain line, because obviously the nature of TV debate is in such a way. But in a podcast, it is who you are. It is your inner self. So it's something that I think it's such an amazing medium, and I wish there are more podcasts that come out so that we can sort of work towards building a better, harmonious society.
And yeah, like you said, media discourse is so, to be honest, sometimes it gets very toxic, right? How should youngsters,
Correct.
especially who watch and read such news all the time, right? Right thinking youngsters, and it causes a lot of anxiety, the outrage culture, because every
Yeah,
day there is an outrage. News is supposed to convey bad information to us, things going wrong, but the manner in which it is covered, there is so much outrage. Don't you think it will like increase social anxiety? Do you think sometimes people should switch off from the news?
yeah, it has increased social anxiety, and I do believe that, and I hope people start switching off. Personally, I face so much of hate and threats on both sides because of the positions I take. Uh, for example, and I've shared this earlier, I will share this. There are rape threats to my wife. There are threats to throw acid on me. There was one time I was doing lunch at a hotel in Delhi, when a gentleman came up to me. It was with a diplomat of a friendly foreign country. We were doing lunch. Came up and said he would like to cut off the head of somebody I knew. Just walked up to me. So, I have security around me, and it's to that extent constricting. On the other hand, I've also faced threats from the left loonies. It is very toxic. It is extremely, extremely toxic, to the extent that sometimes your life comes under threat. It is something that you see, it is hatred. And sometimes people see you because you're a public figure, because I'm a public figure, right? So I could so after this interview, right now today I'm in Delhi. I have to go to defense colony for a friend. She's doing a little high tea, and I have to go there. And it could be that market where I'm going, there could be somebody who's seen you on TV and doesn't like a point of view and just wants to push you or get aggressive with you. So there is a toxicity that's coming. News channels have fueled this toxicity. And I would urge news channels, especially anchors, to just reflect and calm down. Look, these anchors have everything in life. Life's been very kind to them. They have a house, kids, good education. Don't do this. Let's calm down. We need to calm down. So I think there's a lot of toxicity spreading through news channels. It'll be nice if they can calm down. But I think what's happened is news channels are losing viewership and people are moving to mediums like podcast. They're moving. And if you even see a podcast, if you see this podcast and you see the stats when we release your podcast and mine, it's not just the viewership, it's the average time spent on watching your conversation will be much higher than a news channel. Because people want good content. We are a country that wants content. Now, you can keep fueling the negativity or you can give them good content like we are giving and see where people come.
Yeah, that's a valid point in the sense, especially engagement. People, more or less go through the whole thing if they start. So,
Yeah. Especially if it's to good looking people like us.
of course, I accept that compliment. But there is one area where I feel a lot of discussion happens, which is about our past, about our history. There's one point of view which thinks that we should kind of either sanitize history or take certain aspects of it which will help us build our today. And there is another point of view which says that we should read history for what it is. And if there are difficult periods in our past, we should not shy away from it. We should treat the youth to be mature enough to understand that complexity. And even if mistakes happened in the past, it is for us to learn so that we don't repeat them in the present and the future. So, from the point of view of from this perspective, so this is one area. And the second thing is excessive focus on the past, right? Like extra obsession about the past also means that we are divorcing ourselves from the current day in the sense. So that is also there, but there has to be a balance somewhere. What do you think about this issue, dealing with the past and moving forward?
Every nation, every culture, every way of life must learn from its past. Must know its past, must learn from its past. Because if you don't and you ignore your past, you're doomed to fail in the future. So you must learn from it. But you can't hold on to it and hold that as what happened 400 years ago as a reason to either spread hatred today or hold on to a glorious past and then live in that glorious past today, because that also shows inferiority complex. So we must learn from our past. We must absolutely respect our past, not commit the mistakes of our past, but we must not live in the past. We must live in the today. So we must not have false bravados about the past. Neither must we ignore the past. It must be balanced. We must accept the complexities. We must learn from them without getting emotionally too angry about it. Of course, we'll get emotional, but angry about it. And we must not use that emotions to bring about hatred today because of some wrongs that happened. But we must use those wrongs that happened in the past to guard against wrongs today. So I think it should be balanced. But again, I think that, look, I come from a very philosophical point of view, right? Which is about something that I do, my meditation, and it's also to do a lot with science, right? So the past does not exist anymore as a philosophy, right? It did at one point, but it doesn't exist anymore. The future does not exist. It will, but it does not exist. What only exists is the present. The past did exist at one point, but it's over. It doesn't exist anymore. Correct? It's over. It's done with. The future will exist, but it doesn't exist anymore. What exists is today, this moment, now. We must look at building our now. Yes, within that now, we must make a better future by learning from the past. But neither exist. What exists is today. Can we work today to make today better for everyone? For our 140, 150 crore Indians, fellow citizens? Can we do that? And thereby, by making today better, learning from the past, make our future better. Today is very important because today is the time when we have our fellow citizens who are struggling, who want better lives, better jobs, better health, better nutrition, better opportunities. Can we create that? Therefore, their future becomes better. And can we look at our glorious past as a stepping stone to building a fabulous future where people do not go ahead in life because of who they are born to, but because of merit? Can we make our India that way? I think that is the question that we need to ask ourselves. While we conquer all the moons and the stars and the planets, can we think about the man on earth also and make his life slightly better? And I love that we're conquering the space. But can we also make their lives better? There should be no conflict in the two. There should be unanimity in the two.
While I like the larger point you made, but the example you gave, I have a slight disagreement in that because ye maine
Bola?
हाँ, especially BBC etc. have covered this a lot, and it always happens when India sends a space mission. They say that, oh, this space mission was cheaper than even their movie or a Hollywood movie like Gravity. And then they say कि हम aid नहीं देंगे because they don't need aid. They are sending the issue. The issue here is, I'll give you a very small
I
example. एक छोटा example.
let me just clarify. Let me just clarify. I am for the space mission. I am saying we should have more space missions. But while we do that and we are proud of it, we should also work on the people on the earth. I'm saying both should
I
exist. I'm not saying one should
I
be
agree
neglected.
with you. I'm saying that, let's say, sometimes people actually don't see that these space missions, especially ISRO ka, even NASA, when they send a mission, no, it's not just एक तो है, of course, the pride of going to Mars and Moon, etc., etc. But when you work on these missions, there are many things that you invent during the
Yeah.
journey which impact regular people's
Yes.
lives.
And that should be brought into the fore.
That gets
So,
lost.
no. So that's what I'm saying. We are saying the same thing. That should not get lost. So, great. We put Chandrayaan on the moon. Great. We're both happy. But the process of putting Chandrayaan on the moon, maybe we've invented a pulley. I'm just
Yeah,
giving a
yeah.
very basic example that can help somebody lift heavy weight. That can help our person on earth. That should also be glorified. Are you getting what I'm saying? We're both saying the same thing. So the same thing must happen in that process of an indigenous way of putting the Chandrayaan on the moon. The technology used to put a spacecraft on the moon may have had several benefits for citizens in India. Why India? Across the world. We must also promote that.
Yeah.
It should not just be the moon. While I love that we are on the moon, let us also conquer the world. And somebody in Africa, in Somalia, a poor man in Somalia, lifting heavy weight or lifting water from kilometers apart, from living in a desert in Africa. Maybe Chandrayaan, I don't know, has an invention that can lift something easily, and maybe that technology indigenous can go to Africa and solve a massive problem for them. Maybe while putting a mission to the moon, the Aditya mission to the space, we've had some idea. I'm just giving a very basic idea of being able to make something portable, and that portability can be also used on Earth for water and help in the deepest deserts of Africa bring water. So while we've done that, let's also conquer the earth and help people. While maybe of course we didn't send men to the moon this time, but maybe we also have nutritional packet for our scientists who are our space missions. All right, for right now we didn't, but in future, otherwise they remove that portion and troll the two of us saying that we said in Chandrayaan. So maybe that food packet which is nutritional can also be sent to Africa to end hunger. Correct? So maybe we can use that and collaborate. We're saying the same thing. And India can be a world leader, providing solutions not just to space, but also to Earth.
Absolutely. So, last but not the least, how do you think youngsters in daily lives, how should they handle differences with others? There are a lot of people, Tehseen, who, especially at the workplace, in college spaces, educational institutions, they are so terrified of voicing their opinion that they maintain a code of silence to avoid getting
Yeah.
cancelled. I'm talking about regular people. See, people like you will, because you have that visibility, you can express your view. Obviously, you also face greater threats. But for regular people who are worried about their daily lives, they might lose their job, or they might face certain consequences, and they would not have the same recourses that may be available to you, right? How should they handle that? And also personal relationships, matlab, husband wife, girlfriend boyfriend ho, between family, father and son, siblings, etc., when they have differences, how do you think they should handle it?
First, my one advice to everyone, all right, this is one basic advice. Live in gratitude. The minute you start living in gratitude, you just realize your life is amazing and you don't want to fight with others. So start living in gratitude. Number two, so that's a personal thing. Number two, realize that for another person to hear your point of view, you must be able to hear another person's point of view. We need to inculcate that problem. I can't come on your show and say only my way of right or my point is right. I have to accept what you said. For example, what you told me about the cancel culture abroad. I agree with it. How can I disagree with your point of view? I may disagree with it, but if I don't hear you out, you'll feel cancelled. Therefore, you'll cancel me. So if I want to be heard, I must have the patience, the magnanimity, and the bandwidth to hear another point of view. Third, realize none of us are enemies. We all want a common larger good. The common larger good is our country does better, therefore our area does better, therefore our family does better, therefore we do better. Or we do better, therefore our family does better, therefore our area does better, therefore our country does better. It's the same cycle. We all want it. Maybe your way of making the country do better may be slightly different from my way. But as long as we both recognize that we're not anti-national, we both want the country to do better, and therefore uh, the rest of it, we can talk to each other. Lastly, human beings across the world want a better quality of life. Across the world. Can we now start engaging with each other to make everyone's way of life better, thereby making our country's way of life better? We are soon going to be we are now the fifth largest economy in the world. Soon going to be the third largest economy in the world, and I'm very proud of that. I am. But what use is it being the third largest economy in the world if our per capita income is 127th or 120th or whatever it is amongst the lowest? Can't our per capita income wise also be become among the top 10? And therefore, that makes us a even better place to live in. This is a great place, but even better. Can't we aim to reduce inequalities? Why should my kids get better education than somebody else's kids just because they're born to me out of privilege? Shouldn't education and basic healthcare be the same for everybody? Shouldn't that be our aim? Shouldn't everyone learn English? Because English will take Web 3.0 and blockchain ahead and AI ahead. Shouldn't we make it an aim? Why should only the privileged? And English is a language of the privileged. I am not saying don't learn your regional language or Hindi. I am saying shouldn't English also be taught to everybody because it's a language of the future? Shouldn't we look towards that? And I'm very important, and I think we should have these discussions rather than bringing in uh, blinders in between or divisions in between. We should aim. I should hope that your child, whenever you're married, you have children, or without being married, if you have children or you adopt children, get the same opportunities as my son. That is what will make our country and together. If we are one family, families have differences, but if we look at each other as family, wanting a better life for each other, and we look out for each other, and we care for each other, and we genuinely care for each other. Look at how beautifully we came together during COVID. We used social media so positively. We didn't think it was a Hindu or a Muslim's WhatsApp or tweet. We didn't think it was a man or woman or a third gender or transgender's WhatsApp or tweet. We rushed not to oxygen. When Sachin Tendulkar scores a century, or a Virat Kohli, or a Dhoni, or a Yadav, or a Shubham Gill, is it a Hindu, Muslim, Punjabi, or is it a Team India? Why can't we be Team India all the time? Why can't nation be first all the time? Sure, your way of reaching there is different from my way of reaching there. But can't I hear your way of life and you hear my way of life and understand the goal is the same? That is what we need to bring in between.
Absolutely, Tehseen. I think my two takeaways of this conversation are building bridges and focusing on, the indicators which impact our daily lives. And I wish a lot more people would have conversations about those. To me, this was a very fascinating and eye-opening conversation. I hope it was the same for you as well.
It was. I spoke from the heart. I honestly spoke from the heart. This came from within. There was no pretense. This is who I am. And I want to thank you because you brought this out in me. This is who I am. And I know that you have a certain way of thinking which is slightly right. And I respect that. And I want to tell your viewers, I am economically right of the center. I
So
do
am I.
believe that economic growth will come. Yeah, economic growth will come in your strength right of the center. We have to be a nation that creates entrepreneurs, that creates jobs. But creating entrepreneurs cannot mean if I start a spa, the police come in to check every 2 minutes. Or I have to go running to the police station. Or if I'm starting a bar, every 5 minutes somebody is moral policing. We must encourage entrepreneurship. We must look, you run a podcast. I'm just going to take 2 minutes more. Imagine if there's a gun on your head. Then listen your conversation with Tehseen. I didn't like it. I'm going to put the ED, the CBI, the police calls you. You will not run a podcast. You'll say, why the F do I run a podcast? Who's going to stress this? Entrepreneurship will grow when there is freedom. We must celebrate freedom. We must encourage freedom. But in freedom, freedom comes with responsibility. But there will always be people who make errors. We must not look at people who make errors, bona fide errors, not mala fide, as enemies. We must look at them as part of us in a process of learning. When you started your podcast, you must have made mistakes in the beginning. So, for example, you've told me keep the podcast on for 5 minutes for it to upload. Maybe at some point you didn't learn it. So, imagine the police came down to say, "Oh, aapne podcast chalu de rakha." We must not have guns on people's heads. We must learn to encourage. And only when we encourage each other, as a country, we must stand up for each other. We must support each other. We must celebrate each other. We must celebrate our diversity, not hate each other, not fight with each other. Then I think we've achieved so much in 75, 76, 75, 76 years. I think the next 24, 25 years is meant for glory for this country. We'll achieve a lot more.
Absolutely. India at 100. That's a great vision to have for now.
India at 100, not just the third largest economy at the world or the second largest, because I said in another podcast, I don't consider China competition. China is a dictatorial country. India is a democracy. India's competition should be America, France, England, Canada. Canada, of course, having bad times with right now, but countries that have very high GDP and that are democracies, these should be India's competition. The fact of the matter is, it should not just be the third largest GDP in the world, it should be in the top 10 per capita income in the world. That
Absolutely.
is what will make India
Absolutely.
great.
Because a lot, यही मेरा इशू है कि थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी, अरे पॉपुलेशन इतना ज्यादा है, वो तो होना ही है. Look at the population of UK. You've just
Yeah.
like crossed them, right? Like you can't say that, oh, we are better. It's your income has to go up. That's when you.
And the only way for income to go up is entrepreneurship. We need to create entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs will be created when you give them opportunities without favoritism, without fear of tax terrorism or police. Look at what's happening. I'm going to take a minute more because I know you're right of the center economically, as you said. Look at the tax terrorism in our country. See, I'm going to put this out. The other day, this Grover, that Shark Tank guy, I don't know his first name, A Grover, Ashneer, no? Ashneer, जो भी है, उन्होंने ट्वीट किया, ये सच है. They're getting income tax notices. Okay, please give the income tax returns of people who've invested in startups. Why should a startup, suppose you come to a startup and you ask me to invest, why should I give you my income tax returns? And the IT already has it. See, this all should stop. We cannot be today in Dubai for fintech. In 30 minutes, you can start a company and they'll welcome you, which is not a democracy. Why shouldn't that be in India? You don't have rules in India.
Singapore.
Everyone's
It's
moving to Singapore.
extremely easy to open a business.
20 minutes and they'll tell you thank you. 20 minutes, not 21, 20, your business is ready. Why are we not doing it? We have the technology. They're taking Indians who are building the technology there. We have it. We don't have the we are not doing it. We need to encourage our entrepreneurs. We need to push them. Yes, they will make mistakes. Yes, they will make it. But they are people, no? Of course they will make mistakes. Can't we encourage them, enjoy with them, enjoy this process with them, build with them, celebrate with them?
And one last thing I would say, you can't criminalize a failed entrepreneur, both socially and
Oh God.
legally. That I mean, I know it's a whole different topic, but you
Yeah, I
can't throw
agree
them
with
in
you.
jail. You
And
liquidate
and
them.
and
That's it.
and people are celebrating. People are celebrating. It's become a world sport. Look, if somebody's business fails, right? It's a bona fide mistake. Let them clear their liabilities, clear their tax liabilities, and let them go easy in, easy out. If you criminalize somebody for a failed business, nobody will start a business. Why are so many HNIs leaving India? Ask ourselves. Why are all startups registering in Dubai and Singapore? Ask ourselves. Are these countries or are these cities better than India? No, they're not. They're Indians who are building those platforms. Why? Because people don't want the criminalization. You can't go after an entrepreneur. Let me be very basic. You start a spa. Why should the police come in to check what's happening there? You start a service industry, a restaurant. Every 2 days, police will come in. Why can't you encourage entrepreneurship? Gyms, startups, tech industry, encourage them, encourage people to come there. Why should there be a sword hanging over people's heads?
Absolutely. Great. With that, we come to the end of today's show, Tehseen. It was great fun talking to you. Would definitely like to have you sometime in the future as well.
Yeah, I'd love to. We went from one extreme to entrepreneurship. Look at how versatile we are.
We found the common ground between us. Right.
No, no, listen, I am right of the center economically. I've tweeted this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm very clear.
Great. Okay, then, guys, signing off. Until next time, please don't forget
See,
to like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel. I'll see you around.
see you guys.